But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
That was pretty interesting. Well, I guess now we all know Gaster's true identity. But what about his origin story? Greetings, fellow gamers, and welcome to this brand new installment of KnowledgeUp. And today we're covering that horse that has definitely not been beaten to death and beyond, W.D. Gaster. Well, at least part of him. As probably most of you know by now, game theory did a really good three-parter that proved that papyrus and sands are actually two parts of the same being. However, that still leaves a lot of big questions unanswered. Where did Gaster come from? What were his motives? How was the big mistake that ended up in him being split into space and time provoked? Those are the questions that I'll hopefully answer here today. So let's start by taking a good look at the residents of the underground. No! Not like that! Never like that. Get that out of here! Anyway, as you can see, we've got goats, fish, dinosaurs, frogs, dogs, spiders. Are you noticing a pattern here? They're all animals. Well, there is one area that has monsters which are not animals, Hotland, but still they are all inanimate objects. We got fire, volcanoes, tsundere plains, you know, the usual. The point is, none of the skeletons of these creatures would even remotely resemble that of a human. Sands and papyrus, instead, are clearly human skeletons. They even repeatedly make references to names of actual bones humans possess. Just look at them! Their very existence implies dead humans. Now, we already made a lot of progress here without noticing. If we can all agree that skeleton implies human and that Gaster is a skeleton, because of the reasons stated in matpats video, such as appearance and his name being the combination of two fonts that represents the brothers, we can assume that Gaster came down from the surface and traced his life as a human before he went into the underground. We've already got two important details that can tell us a lot about his past life. First, he's a man of science. Second, his main research is finding out about determination. Now, what is determination to the world of Undertale anyway? Beyond the fact that it allows having superior perception of existence and to control space and time, I'd like to add something very important. Determination, in Undertale, is a myth. Think about it. A lot of people have pointed out that a society like ours, like the one that we see at the end of the pacifist route, would be absolutely impossible if determination worked as shown in the game. And that's because nobody actually knows of its existence or take it seriously. The beginning of the game tells us all we need to know. The war between humans and monsters, the power of souls and determination, they are all ancient lore long forgotten by mankind. Imagine if I told you right now that the ancient Mexican tribes were right, and that by killing a man and wearing his flesh as a coat during the night of a full moon, you could gain blood-bending abilities. You would think I was crazy. It's the same with determination and Undertale's society. But if that's the case, then what is a scientist like Gaster doing researching some old legend? Well, we can assume that he was desperate. Exhausting all other plausible scientific possibilities, he tried to find the solution to a problem in legends and myths. And what's the one most tempting capability that determination repeatedly shows to possess during the course of the game, and that is mentioned many times in the myths? Bringing back the dead. Well, now it's getting interesting. So Gaster, desperate to revive someone, goes, not falls like some other idiot kid we know, goes into the underground. Why? To gather data, of course. After all, he knows that determination makes its most prominent appearance in the stories of the war between humans and monsters, so he assumes that there has to be some crucial information that only monsters possess. Now chronologically, this all happens before Chara falls himself. I'm going to explain more on that later, but for now all we need to know is that Asgore doesn't completely hate humans yet. So Gaster pleads before the king and queen, whose house, by the way, is right at the entrance of the underground, so this all makes geographical sense. And out of pity, they decide to grant him the opportunity to conduct his research. However, Asgore just couldn't have a human running around his kingdom, as it would raise a lot of questions. So he decides to create a special position for the man, the position of royal scientist. Think about it. Why is a predecessor to Gaster, or heck, even to Alphys as the royal scientist, never mentioned? It only makes sense in a place with only one library that a thing such as a royal scientist could never exist. That is, unless it was some random title made in the spot to protect a human. In the end, Gaster finds out that his hunch was right. Thanks to the lore written in the walls of Waterfall, he finally obtains a better understanding of what determination is and how it functions. And thanks to that, he manages to draw the famous blueprints that Alphys later uses and create the very first model of the determination extraction machine. Now here's a question. What is entry number 17? Many separate theories exist that try to explain its meaning and value and importance in the story, but I would just like to consider it in the most basic of ways. What Toby Fox was trying to do by purposely missing entry number 17 in the True Lab was to create a connection, a parallel between the stories of Gaster and Alphys. And truthfully, since they both use the exact same blueprints to build the exact same machine, we can assume that they both do similar things with it. So at this point, we can assume that Gaster injects some determination in the bodies of dead monsters and voila! He brings them back to life. Apart from that, on the advice of Asgore, he's also been working on a side project, the Core, a completely useless but gigantic piece of machinery only meant to build the human's character and popularity among the monsters. And the plan works with flying colors. The dude came in and brought citizens back to life, provided them with new weapons to fight humans, and built the Core. No wonder the guy had followers. Weird choice of words by Toby Fox, right? But at this point, it does make a lot of sense. To many, Gaster had to be a messiah, the last drop of hope in their dark prison. But still, it was way too soon to try and experiment anything on a dead human body. After all, the consequences of determination on a corpse were not documented anywhere, and Gaster wanted to make sure that the experiment was a success. And he got his golden chance when one day a kid dropped from the surface straight onto his death below. Now usually Asgore would take this human soul and preserve it, so that he might use it to eventually break the barrier. But that's when Gaster intervened and made his offer. If the soul was given to him, he could study its components and hopefully create a method to duplicate it so that he might break the barrier himself. Since Gaster had proven himself to be more than trustworthy at that point, on top of his crazy popularity, the king could not deny. So, as soon as possible, Gaster injects the recently deceased human body with determination and it works! Chara miraculously comes back to life. Probably filled with glee, Gaster proceeded to inject determination onto the corpse of the person he wanted to bring back. And nothing happens. This could have been due to two reasons. Either Gaster waited for too long, at which point the soul would have already been long dead and the body too fragile to take the determination, or, as many have speculated, only certain special humans with already high amounts of determination can actually harness its powers and be aware of its existence. Whichever the case, Gaster was once again consumed by desperation. Until he realized there was still one possibility he had not tried yet. One that appeared several times in the legends, the combination of the souls of a human and a monster. That's when an ill-minded Gaster approached Chara, who wanted to repay the royal family for all that they had done for him, and suggested a plan to free all monsters trapped in the underground. You have to kill yourself with these flowers and then fuse your soul with that of your brother. Think about it. How did Chara come up with such an intricate plan in the first place without knowing exactly how determination worked? Plus, let me ask you something. What can be found in one of the rooms of the True Lab? Oh yes, a plantation of the deadly flowers. How weird, right? The results of his last experiment, however, were not at all what Gaster expected. He was informed that the stones of the king and queen were both found dead. Filled with guilt and regret, Gaster ran back to his lab to find terrible melted atrocities that were once a community of his revived monsters. Driven to the edge of madness, Gaster just couldn't give up, so he made one last desperate attempt. If he could in some way break the timeline and travel into one in which his son was alive, he would reverse time to bring his son back. No, he would bring his son from another timeline into this one. He had no idea what he was doing, but he owed to himself this one last experiment. He injected himself with as much determination as he could find and recorded his last living moments in entry number 17. And well, the rest, as they say, is history. So who was this person that Gaster was trying to bring back so badly? Well, dear audience, prepare to have your minds blown because I believe that it was, in fact, his son, Frisk. If you ask me for proof, I can just tell you that it's staring right at your face throughout the entire game. In the story, something just doesn't seem to fit in. Everyone thinks you're Chara, and if you reach the genocide route ending, you're greeted by Chara, who looks exactly like you. But in the pacifist ending, you're Frisk. In many instances, like when you talk to the mirrors at the end of the game, it seems to be established that there are two beings inside the same body, Chara and Frisk. And only in the end of the game does the character ever assume a definitive identity. Well, here is my theory. In his final desperate attempt, the scientist was only partially successful, as he only managed to create yet another amalgamation. Yet this time it was composed of two humans. Now here's where we get to the complicated part. Remember how the font value determined if and when certain events happen in the different playthroughs of the game? A character might behave in a certain way in one timeline and then do something completely different in another one. And what decides which is a random value, a mysterious force that nobody can really explain. Now here's the real question. Why does Undertale always cover the same exact story in every single timeline the player is allowed to explore? Well, here's why. There is an anomaly in the time and space continuum, and it is the amalgamation of Chara and Frisk. The timeline just cannot decide if the being is one or the other. And here is where the mysterious force that I talked about earlier comes into play. You, the player, through playing the game, through your phone, are deciding if the character you play as will be Frisk or Chara. And only at the moment that identity is determined is the game over, because you have accomplished your purpose. This all goes hand in hand with the structure and objective of the game itself. To those experiencing it, it truly is a tale. The world opens up to you and allows you the chance to explore and to literally meet all of its inhabitants, ultimately leaving you to decide its outcome. This is also the reason as to why, in the neutral endings, your character does not pick up the phone, because you have failed at your mission, and without your control and with no definitive identity in place, the being is left a literal empty shell with no soul or will of its own. Phew, that was a long one. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I put a ton of work onto it and I actually had a lot of fun doing so too. I guess now I see why this theorizing thing has become so popular on the internets. Anyway, as always, any and all criticisms are completely welcome down in the comments. I hope your conspiracy needs are satisfied and remember to keep your knowledge up!